Hello and welcome to Embodying Mystical Mac. I'm Mac, and if you're new here, thank you so much for joining. If you are returning, thank you so much for coming back. Today we have a very much awaited The Wild Robot commentary review, if you will. I'm trying a little bit of a new setup here. I've got my robot, I've got a bird to represent the gosling, and I guess Shyla's just hanging out because we love witches here. So yeah, let's just get right into this, okay? The Wild Robot, a masterful exploration of belonging, parenting, and humanity. This movie, when I tell you that I was a mess throughout the entire film, when I tell you that taking notes for this video was a bit of a struggle bus ride because I kept crying at like every point in the plot breakdown. And then I kept crying some more when I would try to talk about the points that I'm trying to make here. It was a bit of a struggle, but I'm glad we're here. Let's just get right into it. So The Wild Robot is a DreamWorks film based on the kids' book series by the same name by Peter Brown. Really, honestly, DreamWorks appears to have nailed it. I have not read the books, so I can't say for certain how closely the adaptation is, done. However, if you just look at the art style of the books, before they do that thing where they put any sort of movie, anything attached to it on the cover, whatever, they seem to have essentially taken the art style directly off the page, which I insanely appreciate. Like, that was brilliant. Okay, the bane of my existence, here we go. For those of you who maybe have not seen it, I mean, first of all, what are you doing? Definitely watch the movie, it's fantastic. However, if you are one of those people, like I am at times, who is just here for the content, here is the plot breakdown. Once again, the bane of my existence. All right, so first of all, we start with a package, right? Getting lost on an island. Clearly things went wrong. It wasn't supposed to be delivered there. And we meet Roz, who is a helper robot, Rosin Edition, hence her name. And she gets lost in the wild on an island when her airship doesn't quite make it. So initially she tries to help animals like she would humans, which, doesn't go over very well, especially with the animals. And after realizing this, Roz, by the way, I'm like, this plot breakdown is so difficult to create because there's so much that happens that I'm going to describe in probably a few sentences. But really, like, we really get to know what her MO is, right? And so after realizing this, that she's not really being helpful, Roz stops to engage in quote learning mode, which is a fantastic sequence. I loved it so much. She essentially shuts down and absorbs the world around her in hopes of decoding it and therefore understanding it better so that she can hopefully communicate with it in a more productive manner. And after learning all of the animals' languages and dialects and the rhythm of the forest, she tries to help yet again. However, at this point, due to her, previous attempts, she is now considered a monster, and the animals, if anything, will either mess with her or will just avoid her altogether. Some kind of screw with her by messing, like I said, some kind of screw with her. I think it was like the raccoon type animals, which doesn't that just make sense? By messing with her like inner wiring, while others, like I said, just run or completely shun her away, even if they're not necessarily running out of fear, right? So due to an unfortunate accident, she ends up becoming the caretaker for a gosling egg. That's who Poke, the Porg, here we go. That's who he's representing today. I'm not gonna touch him because if I touch him, he's gonna make Porg sounds. Anyhow, back on track. Yeah, so this egg ends up being the sole survivor of an accident that Roz is a part of, and the whole gosling family is dead, and this is the egg, and she takes care of it. So she meets a fox named Fink while he tries to steal the egg, albeit unsuccessfully. It hatches, and a runt gosling, I don't know why I said it like that, and a runt gosling imprints on Roz as his mom. So apparently goslings are a type of bird where the first thing that they see, or the first living being that they see, they are going to assume that's their mother, which, ideally it would be. But in this case, it is Roz. And at first she, ignores him, goes about her business. She's just kind of looking for tasks to complete as she was before, except now she can actually communicate with the forest and the animals. When a mama possum, by the way, I deeply apologize, other than Brightbill, Fink, and Roz, I'm pretty sure, and a couple others here and there. I'm pretty sure I don't remember very many names of the animals. I apologize. I started writing this when a little bit after I saw it, and kind of, life and work and whatever kind of took me away, and I kind of kept coming back to it, and by that point I just never remembered to look the names up. I deeply apologize, but you guys will know who you all will know who I'm talking about, right? So Mama Possum realizes that the gosling sees Roz as their mom, and through a funny but very relatable conversation assigns her the task of being a mom to the runt gosling, which her programming prompts her to accept. So that was kind of interesting. The Mama Possum, which played by Catherine O'Hara, brilliant. By the way, I've nannied for over 12 years, so I very much understand all of the parenting jokes, and they were fantastic. But through this kind of back and forth, which I really appreciated, the possum is basically well, your task is now to care for this bird, make sure that they fly, swim, and eat, right? And so that works. Fink aligns himself with Roz, saying that he can help her care for the new gosling, for her son, but he realizes he really is just hoping for an easier, less lonely life, okay? Let's put that in our back pocket. Fink is lonely, and he does kind of have an ulterior motive for sticking with Roz, and who we later will learn is Brightbill, okay? So Fink does give little gosling his first meal, and ends up deciding to stick around with Roz and Brightbill, who ends up being properly named after many robotic attempts. That's kind of a cute little sequence. They build a big hut/nest where, with little Brightbill's help, which was so cute and funny, obviously, because the joke is that when toddlers really want to help you, except for you just have to be okay with the fact that they will help you, yet it will take you twice as long to get the thing done. So, but it's awesome, and it's part of the development process, and it's lovely to watch. But yes, for a first-time parent who really, didn't even know they were gonna be a first-time parent, such as Roz, it's a very funny moment to watch her help Brightbill help build the hut. So Brightbill grows up and is learning to swim, but it's clear that he's quite different, as he was raised by a fox and a robot as opposed to a gosling. He's managing swimming rather well, right? He's not just learning, he's managing swimming. But the other goslings make sure that he knows that he doesn't belong, which is a problem, as he needs to migrate with them by the end of fall. So again, raised by a robot and a fox, clearly he's got some quirks that the other goslings are, gonna poke fun at. So him and Roz fight, but Fink reminds her that he has no one else to teach him. So they make up, and with a goal to get him in the air. Because remember, we need to feed him, which we did, and then he needs to learn to swim, which we know that he's managing. However, now he needs to be able to fly, right? Migration, because he won't be able to survive the winter on the island. So Roz learns all she can by observing the flock of goslings, and even builds a whole runway to better help Brightbill take off. But they need an expert. So cue one of the best montages ever, okay? I'll get into it. But yes, Roz does everything she can, helps him in every way that she can, right? As a robot who doesn't have wings and doesn't fly. And then realizes, much like I would hope every good parent realizes, when their ability has gone beyond, or rather when their child needs someone who has abilities beyond said parent, right? So they reach out to the person who has those abilities, who can then teach their child. This is essentially what Roz does. So enter Roz being a great parent by making a deal with a hawk. So she and Fink help him hunt. I take it, by the way, this is the actual exchange leaves it ambiguous, but I take that she and Fink will help him hunt while he teaches Brightbill how to fly. Now, I love this so much. Like, really, this montage, I told you I'd get into it. Here we go. This montage starts kind of with Roz, like, showing Brightbill, you know, projections of how the wing should move, yada, yada, whatever. They come to a point where they realize that they maybe need to get him some speed. So Roz kind of is attempting to run with him so he can kind of like fly off of her. We run into some troubles there, which is why Roz builds the runway. And a little note here, the grumpy beaver gives Roz a wooden part to fix her broken leg so she can better help Brightbill also, which, like, y'all, I loved that part, because after the runway is built, things are going well, except for the fact that Roz has like a pretty severe limp because she, you know, she's been messed with and one of her legs has kind of just given out, and she's had to essentially, I think she was using a part that wasn't really meant to go where it was going. And so the beaver gives her like a wooden version of it, and I love it because the beaver is like super grumpy, and I think Roz says something along the lines of like, I don't know what to say, and he's like, then don't say anything. It's just perfect. I loved it. It was so cute. And it's the beginning, the trickle in of the other animals like starting to shift their perspective, but we'll get there. The brilliance of Roz, actually, first of all of the things that have already been done, love it. Again, nanny of 12 years, there's nothing that fills my heart more than awesome parenting, be it fictional or real. It's fantastic. And the brilliance of Roz reaching out to a hawk to help Brightbill learn is because a hawk is a very fast but rather small bird, right? Just like Brightbill, and even more so because he's a runt. And I go on to say here that the hawk is actually a perfect teacher. He's small, but he's very strong and fast, so he knows being a runt shouldn't stop Brightbill, and it certainly doesn't. And I love this the little exchange that they have where the hawk is like, show me those feathers, and you know, Brightbill is like showing the feathers, but you could tell he's probably a little bit nervous, and the hawk is like, those are perfect. And it's just great. Like, I also love to see underdogs being validated, so that's really brilliant. So after a few days of training, Brightbill is incredible and just needs to work on endurance. So the forest animals have actually been watching, and there's a really cute little sequence when he has like a really good takeoff of flight, and they clap for Brightbill, like, my heart. I loved it. And some start to see Roz in a new light, including Longneck, the head of the migration for the gosling flock. So let me rephrase that a little bit, because he didn't necessarily just start to see that. Like, he's seen how Roz has done her best to take care of Brightbill, and he makes that known when he approaches Roz and lets her know that he's very impressed by her and by Brightbill, showing her how had the accident not happened, because Roz kind of has a moment where, you know, she's like, well, it wasn't supposed to go like this, like, I'm in a way indirectly a reason like why his family's dead, like, oh, right. So Longneck kind of shows her how had the accident not happened, he likely wouldn't have made it as a runt, but because she rescued him and taught him, he actually might. Right? So he instructs her to keep him training in the air from sunup to sundown the whole week, and to meet with him on the day of migration, which of course she, you know, totally takes this to heart and is going to get the job done. And I love this exchange between her and Longneck. Like, it's pretty brilliant. And I also love this kind of like different perspective, because while nature is pretty brutal, there's a cycle of things, and he's right that Brightbill likely wouldn't have made it as a runt, but because Roz rescued him, essentially, here he is, like, actually having a true fighting chance. And I think that's kind of beautiful, because again, had things not happened the way that they did, because while Roz was indirectly responsible because she was part of the accident, and I don't remember specifically how it all went down. From what I recall, though, like, a tree was struck down also. So I don't know, there's a lot of probability if the parents would have even like made it and been able to help their kids, but their baby birds. But again, as a runt with the parents, we don't know. So the fact that like there was essentially some not organic intervention in the way of Roz, we have Bill actually being able to thrive. And I love this. This is a great exchange between her and Longneck. So she does the whole thing that he said, keeps Bright Bill in the air from sun up to sundown, training his endurance. And come the day of migration, he is ready. So Longneck shows Bright Bill the same thing he did to Roz about how he's different due to being a runt, but that the accident in Roz actually changed his fate, you know, or rather losing his family and being cared for by Roz actually changed his fate as a runt. So Bright Bill kind of starts to grasp onto that perspective, and his resentment that he kind of had toward Roz is, I would say, diminishing. They take off with Bright Bill as a second to Longneck, which is like amazing, right? He's essentially like second in command, quote, quote, which go Bright Bill. Roz follows him as far as she can, but they don't get to say how much they love and appreciate each other. This sequence, I was bawling, y'all. It was touching. Roz mentioned she wouldn't be there come spring and turns on her location signal before her deciding to stay, much to Fink's secret appreciation. Winter is rough, with all caps, y'all, rough. And the animals are greatly suffering, so, of course, Roz decides to help. Fink reluctantly also obliges, which, okay. They rescue as many animals as they can, but unfortunately, they're too late for some. I love that the creators didn't shy from showing glimpses of nature's brutality. Truly well done. Makes me wonder if the books are like this as well, which is kind of why, you know, they did this. They kind of maybe they just stuck to the source material, which if that's the case, also appreciate that. Like, I love stories about nature, but it's not that we need them to be quote, quote, realistic, you know, but it does add stakes when we show that there can be a sense of finality and brutality in nature in an age-appropriate way. And it's just a bonus that that is kind of how nature is anyway. So they bring them to the hut, all the animals, Fink and Roz. I love the sigh of relief and the quote, "we're gonna be okay" quote from the possum when they see that it's Roz and Fink. Like, so sweet, so sweet. With prey and their predators all under one roof, things look like they may go south, and Roz needs, again all caps, needs to shut down to recharge her battery. Because again, remember, she's like, because of the messing with her, you know, inner machinery and whatnot, and just the exertion that she's had to do with being a mom and all that, girl is running off solar power, and like there's not much solar power going on in the winter, and after all this rescuing, girl needs to hibernate. So she won't though, until she knows that all the animals are gonna chill out and be okay until spring. So Fink gives the best speech, which by the way, Fink is voiced by Pedro Pascal, which brilliant. The best speech, reminding them how Roz, quote, the monster, quote, as they called her, is the reason that they are all even alive, okay? The bear, which Mark Hamill, I believe, again, what is this casting? I appreciate it. Hey, not to say that I wouldn't really appreciate some unknowns in some of these, animated films. But I do appreciate Mark Hamill's voice, and I do appreciate him as the bear. So the bear, the biggest predator of them all, of the predators in there, right, announces a truce. And all the animals cuddle to sleep as Roz shuts down for the remainder of winter. So I think I even looked this up with my editor, because there's one type of bear that is an herbivore and there's another one that's an omnivore. And I believe this is the one that is an omnivore. And we were discussing also how it really did have to be the most fierce, or rather the predator that is at the top of the food chain, to be the one to be like, yo, Fink's right, calm down everyone. I won't eat any of y'all, so don't eat any of y'all, and let's just make it through the winter, right? Anyways, I appreciated it. Again, this movie is hitting such great beats in the story. They're all landing so well. Let's keep going. So Raz is going to hibernate for winter, as essentially are kind of all the other animals. So meanwhile, the migration is a tough one, and to escape a storm, the flock goes into a man-made orchard, who's cared for by none other than rosin robots. Well, look at that. Brightbill realizes they're not quote-quote Roz, like his Roz, but it's too late, and the robot, but he gets the robot's attention anyway, and it's too late. So the robot alerts security, and fighting robots start to shoot at the flock. Longneck realizes that Brightbill doesn't fear them because all the other goslings are like freaking out, and Longneck is like trying his best to get them to fall in line, to get them to create some sort of a formation so they can just fly on out of there, and nobody's listening. So he realizes that Brightbill is not afflicted by this fear because he literally was not raised like a gosling. Kind of brilliant, again, because I think the only line in the trailer, no. Maybe that was the only line in the teaser. Regardless, one of the most important lines that we got to see in the first promotional run of this with the trailers and whatnot was, sometimes to survive, you must become more than you are programmed to be. And talk about Brightbill becoming more than he's programmed to be just by virtue of being programmed by a robot and, a wayward fox sort of vibes. So Longneck charges Brightbill with seeing the flock safely out while he distracts the fighting bots, which, I knew where this was going, but rough times. With his hawk flying moves, may I add, Brightbill does so. Like I said, I saw this coming. If you didn't, I apologize for you. Because his help, Longneck's, came at the ultimate cost. Goodbye, Longneck. But valiant effort, and his efforts definitely helped get the rest of the flock out. So spring arrives on the island, and the animals go their separate ways while Roz goes looking for Brightbill because she ended up staying, right? She needs to see that he's alive. She finds him, now the most popular gosling, and feels that she will only get in his way, so she leaves. Sad. And Roz is definitely going through the parenting motions here, being your little one's one and only, and then watching them individuate, and then, having them leave the nest and feeling that kind of empty nest syndrome, and then kind of seeing them again for the first time, but as a grown adult now, and maybe feeling like they don't have a place in their life because they don't need them to take care of them anymore. So very sad. That made me very sad. So Fink ends up finding him though and tells Brightbill that Roz stayed. So they go find her, and he expresses his appreciation, which she gladly returns. And there's a really sweet moment. So due to Roz's last retrieval signal being successfully sent, in spite of her disabling it, last minute, robots headed by the human-made evil, and I don't remember what oh no, wait, never mind. I think that was just a note for me. Okay. Robots headed by the human-made, quote-quote, evil, artificially intelligent robot, come and attack the island. So we have a very sweet moment between Brightbill and Roz, and then we're under attack, bitches! Under attack. Wow, I think I waited 25 minutes to cuss. This is great. This is great. We're doing great. Not that my videos aren't necessarily for kids, I'm just saying, but it's kind of helpful because YouTube likes it better when I do it later. Anyway, we're getting off track. Let's not get on the ADHD train. Okay, sweet moment, and then we're under attack, bitches. So due to Roz's last retrieval signal being successfully sent, even though she totally killed it last minute, right? So an evil, octopus-looking AI, maybe squid-looking, to me it looks like an octopus, AI octopus-looking robot says that they came to take her home. So first of all, the way all the animals band together with Roz is the best. And that sequence is so fantastic because it's just initially her, Brightbill, and Fink. right? And as they realize that they're under attack, they kind of start to run, and it's just fantastic because I think one of the first encounter with animals that we get is one with the bear, and we kind of like stop on the bear, and we don't know what's gonna happen for a second because, you know, like we had a truce for winter, but like nobody's talked about afterwards, whatever. And the bear basically just like extends his hand and helps them out. And after that, it's just more and more animals like piling next to them and just being ready to fight whatever comes their way. It was absolutely brilliant. And yes, the octopus looking bot says that they have come to take Roz home. So the hawk, Brightbill's trainer, says, quote, "Tell them you're already home." And my heart exploded and my tears ran faster. It was a brilliant scene. It was a brilliant scene. Like, to watch her go from like a monster that nobody wanted to talk to like being part of their ecosystem, to the point where one of the island animals tells her to tell this little octopus AI that she is already home, so she can go F off, okay? Anyways, so she says so, Roz says so, that she's already home, and she adds that she is a wild robot in response to Octobot's argument, which, the fact that she says, you know, I am a wild robot, normally it would come across cheesy. Normally it would come across like, oh yeah, you're saying the title. But because this was done so well, it actually comes across so beautifully and in such like a heartfelt yet like triumphant way. I absolutely loved it. It was absolutely fantastic. Okay, so the animals slay the killer bots. Let's see, the same bots as in the orchard that came out to attack the gosling flock. But now the forest is on fire, which is kind of rough. Also, Octobot is not giving up, and she forces Roz into the ship to take her memories and to shut her down, essentially, so they can take her back, okay? I believe right before, if not kind of while this is all happening, the forest, you know, becomes on fire, has been set on fire by all the fighting, which the animals did great, by the way, real badass energy. And in order to help the forest, they bring back a story plot point that was such a throwaway plot point, but then it becomes kind of really prevalent, actually, which is awesome. I love it when we get payoffs like this. So they bring back the tree that the grumpy beaver has been sawing away at for essentially as long as we know him, as a life mission, and they use their collective strength to push it over into the river, extinguishing the fire. I mean, the hut ends up being destroyed. A lot of things are destroyed. However, at least the fire has been mostly put out. So again, though, Octobot doesn't really give up, puts Roz into the ship, goes on and basically does take her memories and ends up shutting her down. Brightbill, now a very, very skilled and tenacious flyer, finds his way into the ship, but by the time he gets there, it's essentially too late and Roz's memories have been taken and she's been shut down, as I mentioned. Now this, another moment where my heart exploded. He lays on Roz's neck. Now, I haven't really mentioned it because, again, there's so many things I've just skipped over because this is a vague plot breakdown. Keyword vague here. Again, bane of my existence, because genuinely some of these movies that I talk about are so good and I wish I could give you every single plot point, but then I'm like, you might as well go watch it. Anyways, there's a spot on her neck that he would lay on when he was a teeny tiny little gosling. And in various points throughout the film, she's felt that spot with her hand and just kind of recalled, right? It's a spot that it just elicits that little surge of something in her heart that is connected to Brightbill. And he lays right on that spot on Roz's neck because, of course, he too remembers doing that and having a connection to that act. And Roz's soul essentially recognizes Brightbill as she wakes up, proceeding to wreak havoc on Octobot and the ship. So yeah, I mean, listen, we're not in here for like realism. The whole point is that, and we've been hearing this throughout the film, that the spot of, you know, the place in which Brightbill lives for Roz in her loving identity, in herself, in her soul, quote, so to speak. I know she's a robot, but she's sentient, so let's go with soul here. It is a place that is removed from her machinery in a way that there is nothing that anyone could do, including the humans, that they could refurbish her, they could change out all of her inner parts, they could completely wipe her hard drive and take her memories, but they would never be able to take that intrinsic connection that she has to Brightbill. And that is what gets proven in this moment before she, yes, proceeds to wreak complete havoc on Octobot and the ship. So they have to go because the ship is essentially about to blow up, and they realize that Brightbill won't be protected for the fall. Now, they kind of realize this while they're already falling, which, okay. Roz ends up ripping out her internal machinery to make room for Brightbill, and she essentially lets him know what I just said, that the part of her that knows and loves him goes beyond mere machinery. I also appreciate too that there's a moment here, right, where she rips out her inner machinery in order to make room for Brightbill. That it's a saying that I feel like I've heard a lot, is this idea that when you have kids, it's like your heart is living outside of your body. And in a kind of a reverse sort of way, it's almost like, I mean, like she placed him in the place where her quote heart would be, but he's already her heart, you know, so it all just makes sense. Anyways, maybe it only makes sense in my head, but I loved that moment. I thought it was great. And obviously we've seen proof now. Roz does not need the inner machinery to function as she is as her wild robot self. Let's see, they fall, they end up being safe. Octobot is gone, the threat is gone for now, but the forest fire still did a lot of damage, or rather, the robots started, forest fire still did a lot of damage, and of course, as I said before, the hut was destroyed. So the animals join forces to repair the hut. Roz, as a callback to the beginning, lifts Brightbill to add his twigs, as she did when he was little. This time, of course, it's all just pure joy because she's grown to appreciate being his mother, and she's grown to appreciate the moments where it did feel like a complete nuisance to have him help. So we've come full circle here. There's a new photo, because there was a photo of, I believe, her, Fink, and Brightbill, or maybe just Brightbill. It was like, a laser cut photo into wood in the first hut. And in this new hut, there's a new photo of Roz with her arms around all the animals with a heart in the center, which is meant to represent her heart, that part that goes beyond her machinery. Can you tell that I loved this movie? I want to start crying just because I'm talking about this, but I can picture it. I can picture the photo in my brain, and it's beautiful. Roz realizes, though, because in good storytelling, there are stakes. So Roz realizes that they, i.e. another version of Octobot, whatever the humans send in order to get her, because while they do have her memories, it's just not like those kinds of humans to stop. Like, they probably need to examine every bit of her, especially if she managed to escape. Yeah, she realizes that, and not wanting to put the island in further danger, she essentially willingly goes. But she reminds Brightbill and the animals that the part of her who knows him and them and the island cannot be taken away. She holds on to that belief, and she goes. The animals miss Roz, and to remember her, they watch info videos, which got washed up with whatever ship didn't make it to its destination that she fell from, about her, so the info videos about her model, and build snowmen shaped like her, which I thought was so cute and so sweet. They now go through winter together, as she and Fink taught them to. So again, I love this because, listen, nature does a great job evolving, okay? However, while humans can be real destructive, we can also make some really cool things and do some things that can actually really help nature in a shorter span than evolution would, right? And in this case, the outcome of Roz having found herself stranded on that island and having to integrate herself as a wild robot into the island ends up being something that's pretty awesome like this, that all of these animals essentially no longer have to suffer the winter not knowing if they're going to survive. And yeah, of course, they're gonna have a thriving food chain, you know, in the spring and summer and fall upcoming, but, you know, leading up to the winter. And I know, again, we're not here for realism. This is a kids movie. This is a great lesson. This is brilliant. I loved it. So having completed, we're jumping to a different thing now. I was gonna say jumping to a different thing here. Then I went to say jumping to a different thing now. And then I said jumping to a different thing near. Near where? Can I grasp it? Is it right here? Anyhow, jumping to a slight different thing here. Having completed and led the migration, remember, because he did have to lead the migration back because Longneck sacrificed himself, Bright Bill has it in him to actually follow his mom. So he makes a solo journey following the ship that takes Roz. And he ends up at the orchard, very similar, if not the exact same one, and he essentially like locks in on the robot that he believes is Roz. And he waits for the right moment, then peeks out from behind some trees when who he believes his Roz is near, and she recognizes him immediately. Like, we end on her picking him up. I would pick my little guy up, but again, he's gonna like yell at me. So we end up picking him up, or we end on her picking him up and saying, "But you can call me Roz," just like she said in the beginning, confirming that even though she's made of all new parts, because she does, she looks brand spanking new, the part that loves him could have never been replaced or even touched by the people who essentially refurbished her. And here I have a face that's smiling and crying in my notes because this movie is just brilliant, y'all. Like, it's just brilliant. It's absolutely beautiful. It is done so well. The characters come alive. The story goes so seamlessly, yet it goes so many different places that you don't think that they should all go, you know, in the same movie. However, it just works. Like, it just works. It was absolutely brilliant. So now that we are done with the bane of my existence, that is the big plot breakdown, let's get into my thoughts on what the wild robot is trying to tell us, right? What is it trying to teach us? Because that is one of the things that I absolutely adore about kids movies, is that there always seems to be a lesson. And I hope that's the case because, again, kids movies, if they're gonna be watching movies, we might as well like entertain them also with good lessons, you know? So here we go. So I called this video, let me make sure I don't mess up my own title, The Wild Robot, a masterful exploration of belonging, parenting, and humanity. So let's get to that first part of that title, The Wild Robot and Belonging. So Roz begins the film clearly not belonging. Like, no matter how hard she tries to help and therefore belong, she cannot seem to hack it, right? She realizes that she's not helping enough to ask, enough to even ask, I should say, did anyone call for me? Quote. Or did anyone ask for me? Quote. And she does so in a kind of like, are you there, God? It's me, Fiona, like kind of vibe. If you caught that reference, good for you. But like, that's the kind of vibe that she asks that, right? So she gets to be really discouraged by the fact that she is supposed to be a helper and yet she does not belong at all in this place that she's supposed to be helping, or she thinks that she's supposed to be helping, right? Because she assumes that she was sent to the right place, even though she obviously wasn't. So she's pretty hopeless about everything, but not enough yet to like shift her strategy. Okay, which when it comes to like belonging, I feel like there's a lot of times, I mean, I know I did this a lot throughout my life, where I would try to belong in places that just weren't fully vibing with me. And it wasn't my problem, it wasn't the place's problem, you know, or the friend group, whatever. It was just the fact that like the vibes weren't quite aligning. And in this case, what I mean, like enough to shift her strategy, like she hasn't quite gotten to that place where she's like, okay, maybe, just maybe, I can take some agency into my own hands to put myself in a better position, right? So she's working from her default settings, and they're essentially failing her, is what I'm trying to say. For me, and I might be reading too far into this, but I kind of take it as an allusion to, not illusion to unhelpful societal conditioning, perhaps. You know, a lot of us are kind of like programmed to be a certain way. A lot of the times that inhibits the way that we actually want to be as the individual people that we are. And until we kind of like let go of some of that societal programming or even programming that we got from our parents, we kind of don't really, you know, find our groove or find our people or both. So maybe a little bit of hints of a theme with that. So when she realizes this, she essentially, and not only when she realizes this, but when I say when she realizes this, I mean when she starts to understand, like, okay, maybe my default settings are not going to help me in this environment, she activates her learning mode to familiarize herself with this new place and its needs, in hope of doing what she came to do, just in a different way, because she realizes that the way that she was programmed to do things is just not going to work, right? A lot of the time, maybe when we do find our people, sometimes there are things that we are used to that maybe we place a lot of importance or stock in that maybe aren't as important, when we really find the things and people and places that we really truly enjoy spending time in and cultivating our energy in. Be, you know, a little bit of unlearning, so to speak, or rather we might have to go into a bit of like learning mode in order to best thrive in the places that we found ourselves feeling comfortable, right? So in this case, this sequence, I said before, it's quite awesome in spite of genuinely just being a time lapse. Like, it's awesome. I really appreciate the learning mode sequence. And this helps her learn, again, primarily the animals' languages, which is the biggest barrier when it comes to helping, because she can't communicate with anyone. So after learning mode, after she kind of like gets her bearings around that, in the very least, she can communicate now, right? And that in and of itself kind of gains her a little bit of belonging. Moving on, ironically, the accident that leads her to saving Brightbill's egg sort of gets her started even further into her journey of belonging. I mean, she's joined by Fink after making friends with the possum mom, who is the one who, you know, gave her the task of caring for Brightbill in the first place. So already she's communed and kind of created a bit of a bond with two different animals, whereas before she was completely alone and completely lonely. Not only that, obviously she's got Brightbill. So through helping him grow, she learns to belong, like bit by bit, more and more. But sometimes, you know, not sometimes, but for a time, she's still considered, quote, a monster, quote, to a lot of the animals on the island. So this belonging doesn't necessarily come swiftly. It comes kind of bit by bit. But as she continues to just be herself, we find that that ends up being enough, right? So it isn't until Brightbill begins to fly that she really earns the respect of the animals. And I mean, this kind of makes sense to the story that we are witnessing when we're watching The Wild Robot. You know, nature is a bit of a meritocracy in the sense of, like, you know, the strongest, it's survival of the fittest, right? Like the strongest will prevail while the weaker ones won't. And the fact that Roz, a certified monster, quote, quote, managed to get this runt gosling to fly, not even just fly, but fly sufficiently enough to migrate and to be noticed by a prominent part of the flock that's heading the migration, that it makes sense to me that the animals that would kind of be the final straw that would allow them to see Roz as more of an equal, and if not necessarily an equal, someone who they can equally respect as they do the island and their fellow animals, right? And again, with that respect comes more belonging. We get to see this beautiful process take place and flourish. So it's shown beautifully in a few ways, but the sweetest being that the grumpy beaver makes her that leg part out of wood so she can run with Brightbill down the runway. Longneck shows her respect and teaches her how she and the accident are the reason Brightbill, a runt, even got this far, and pushes her to make sure he succeeds. The hawk respected her enough to become Brightbill's trainer in the first place, and completely take her seriously. He could have not. The possum mom showed her kindness and guidance when nobody really was willing to, and cared about the fact that this runt gosling might actually have a chance, even if it didn't quite seem like it because Roz wasn't necessarily taking up the task. We watch her and find belonging with her status of, quote, quote, the wild robot being solidified during the harsh winter, then by the moment she is told by the animals to tell them that she's already home. Again, we see this beautiful process of her being a complete outsider and just making her way into belonging on the island as one of its integral parts. And it's absolutely brilliant. I feel like, again, a lot of the time, us humans, that is kind of what we sometimes do. I mean, I know for myself, when I moved away from my parents' place finally, and I came to live in LA, I mean, I've been here for several years now, but it really did take like a few years for me to, find the third places that I absolutely love. Find the coffee shops that really make me feel like, ooh, this is why I love this area of LA that I live in. Find like the Barnes and Noble and the Targets that I prefer to go to. Find the parks that, if I have a day where I feel like I want to go roller skate outside or whatever, those are the ones that I like to go to. Like, it takes time to kind of like really root yourself and build a home. And though Roz didn't necessarily know that she was building a home on the island, that's kind of what ended up happening. And again, I feel like I've carved a place of belonging here in LA with my friends and third places and my partner and all that. And so we get to watch a similar process played out, obviously through different characters and circumstances here, and it's fantastic. I honestly, fantastic just needs to go on the thumbnail because I feel like I've said that word so many times. She learns who she thought or was, quote, programmed to be, quote, to find out who she truly is, which isn't that what kind of happens to a lot of us in adulthood? Maybe it's just me. You can let me know. She gains sentience, like true sentience, not just a robotic need to accomplish tasks, and a will of her own, a soul even, I'm gonna go as far to say. But only after letting go of the limitations her programming put on her. And she is the one who says in the hut in winter that first time that sometimes to survive we must become more than we are programmed to be. And she does just that, and she leads by example, which I just love that. I love it when someone leads by example. Whether you're made of flesh or metal parts or both. Oftentimes, to find ourselves and where we belong, we too have to let go of old programming keeping us back from our full potential. She instills this in the animals. I just mentioned this. So she instills this in the animals that first winter in the hut, right? Teaching them a new way, like she had to teach herself a new way. Again, leading by example. So next we have the wild robot on parenting, because obviously parenting is a very huge theme in this film, okay? So Roz experiences the full spectrum of parenthood, okay? She's looking for a task when Brightbill imprints on her, and with the help of the possum mama, she accepts the challenge, right? But she is essentially like looking for a purpose. And I'm not saying that I necessarily endorse humans just having children because they need a purpose. I actually think that's not a great reason to have a child. Again, nanny of 12 years here, the happiest, most amazing, both to care for and to work for families that I have ever worked for are the ones that they clearly had their children because they really just wanted to do the best they could to raise amazing humans. It wasn't a checklist item merely. It wasn't to find a sense of purpose in their life because they felt like they had none. So I'm not necessarily saying that I endorse this in humans. However, I'm not going to ignore the fact that I do feel that a lot of people do oftentimes look to having kids as a means of finding purpose. And this is kind of mirrored with Roz as she's just meandering about looking for a purpose, a task to fulfill. And again, the possum mom helps her accept her task, right? So Roz is initially frustrated and has many moments that she will later see as precious, but isn't able to appreciate them as they happen, like the building of the hut, as Bright Bill is, a young little gosling and growing. So in spite of her, and this is, again, very reminiscent of like actual parenting and taking care of children, there's a saying that goes, the days are long, but the years are short. And it's so true. Like, one individual day sometimes feels like it lasts so long because, if you're doing right by your child, you're keeping them on, not a stringent schedule, but a decent schedule where they're napping relatively around the same time every day. They're having their meals around the same time every day, and you're splicing in their activities and their chill time and whatever it is that you're doing. And that does require a lot of thought. So the days sometimes feel like they're really long, but the years definitely feel like they're very short. Like, it does feel like, I've taken care of primarily babies for the last several years, and it really does feel like they're just growing right before your eyes. Like, sometimes I come back after a weekend and I'm just like, oh my God, did you grow an inch? Like, this is insane. We get to see Roz experience this sort of, tiring aspect in the beginning. And of course it comes full circle with her then seeing how, wow, the days were long, but the years were definitely short. Like, that was, no matter how difficult it might have been at times, that was a really enjoyable time with him, right? So in spite of her frustrations, she perseveres and she learns to relearn her ways in order to do the best job that she can. Honestly, I'm a firm believer, and really, like, I love my job as a nanny, and I think it's very evident when I'm taking care of the kids that I take care of that I absolutely love my job. And as much as the fact that I am getting paid really well to do it, I am still like, there for the fact that I would love to help these kids flourish and develop in the best way that I possibly can. I just want to be a loving and structural force in their lives, give them the structure that they need, but also the compassion and love that they need to really flourish and grow. And I do emphasize structure because I feel like when people think of responsive parenting, the people who don't understand it think that it's void of discipline and structure, and that's not true. The discipline and structure just don't come at the expense of the child's emotional well-being, which is why psychologists, are advocating for responsive/gentle parenting nowadays. Regardless, she perseveres and she unlearns certain things in order to become a better parent. And in my experience, again, because when people really want to have kids for the fact that they just really want to raise amazing little humans who are going to become amazing bigger humans, they often tend to take it very seriously. This idea of unlearning their unhelpful behaviors, unlearning their unhelpful patterns, unlearning their unhelpful ways of conflict resolution. And I see this mirrored in Roz, and I love it. I absolutely love it. She gets him to grow, but his unconventional education proves challenging, even though she absolutely did her best. And much like with, real life parenting, you can do your absolute best. You can give them your absolute all. And then there's still going to be things that they are going to need to learn from other people, or there's still going to be things that they might end up having to learn to do in their own way. And that is okay, because that is the process of individuation, and that is absolutely necessary. When she and Bright Bill fight, she accepts that while it was her best, she isn't a gosling and couldn't have given him what others in his species were given. And that's okay. That is just a fact that she has to, live with, much like with a lot of parents, there are certain things that they have to live with that they weren't able to do or give to their kids, that maybe they wish they could have. But in Roz's case, like, it was literally impossible. In some parents' case, it might have been literally impossible given their circumstances, and that's just a fact that you kind of like have to live with, and you have to move on as parent and child regardless. And in the best way, hopefully you talk it out, everybody hears each other out, and you move forward mutually, right? But as good parents do, she remains committed regardless of her shortcomings, right? She remains committed to helping him migrate. And as great parents do, she even outsources help from an expert, i.e. the hawk in this case, right? So again, fantastic parenting in the sense that, okay, she can't get him like that final stretch of teaching that he needs in order to be able to like migrate. She goes and gets the help that he needs. I mean, literally, again, nanny of 12 years. I've also worked in a private preschool. And I mean, honestly, one of the things that made me really sad would be to see parents who just weren't willing to own up to the fact that their child was neurodivergent. And because they weren't willing to own up to the fact that their child was neurodivergent, their child wasn't getting the support that they needed. They were getting the support that a neurotypical child would be given, which obviously is not going to help. And all that parent has to do is be willing to acknowledge the child that they have. Like, that would just make me so sad. And in this case, it's not necessarily Roz. I mean, actually, in a way, yeah, Roz is acknowledging Brightbill in the sense that she didn't go looking for, an eagle. She didn't go looking for a giant bird. She went looking for a hawk. She's taking into consideration the fact that she can't actually physically teach him to fly because she doesn't know herself. And she can't necessarily get a bird of flight who is not like him to teach him either. So she's, really just thinking like a great parent and doing the thing that needs to be done, which I love. So her dedication with Fink's and Hawk's help obviously is very fierce, and Brightbill does learn to fly, and he learns to fly well. Like, when a parent does everything that they can for their child in the way that they can, and comes from a place of compassion, comes from a place of understanding their child, comes from a place of genuinely wanting to meet their needs as they are, not as they think they are. Because I feel like a lot of parents try to meet their child's needs, but they're not their child's needs. They're actually the needs that the parent is projecting onto the child. Now, when the parent actually tries to meet their child's needs as their needs are, oftentimes that child ends up succeeding and ends up excelling. And we see this with Brightbill. Brightbill and Roz are shown a different perspective on their, meeting, the tragic way that they met. But with Roz's job well done and with Roz's job very well done, Brightbill, he flies off before they can really share their love for each other. And this kind of like, to me, gives the same energy as, how young adults often don't really appreciate their parents till they are adults themselves and have essentially left the nest to create a nest of their own. I know I definitely have become like not that I wasn't affectionate with my family before, but I feel like I'm way more affectionate with my family now than I ever was before, just for the fact that like I just have this much deeper appreciation for family in general, for my family in general, by virtue of just being a little bit older and, knowing what it's like being an adult and knowing what it takes to keep in touch with everyone and show everybody that you care about them and meet up and, celebrate milestones, things like that. So I feel like that's just the kind of energy that kind of last near miss that they had before he came back for spring. That was the energy that I was feeling that it was giving. So, and we enter empty nest syndrome and Roz's decision to stay on the island to see if Brightbill made it, right? So Roz realizes that even though Brightbill's survival is out of her hands, she cannot go without knowing that he made it, which, if she wasn't a completely committed and devoted parent before, this definitely is the moment where that is locked in for anyone who wasn't catching on to that. Because she literally just cannot go until knowing that he truly made it, that he's alive, he'll be able to migrate after this again, you know, all of that. So she continues to nurture the island, essentially Bright Bill's home, while he's gone. Which again, like, right, it's not like the parents leave the nest, like the children leave the nest, and the parent continues to nurture that same home that the child lived in for as long as they're in it. You know, obviously, like, people move and whatnot, but I would imagine that the parents that have good relationships with their adult children, there's always a place for their adult children at their home for a visit or whatnot, right? And this is kind of, in my opinion, what Roz is doing while she's waiting for him, right? She's taking care of the ecosystem that is his home all of the seasons out of the year except for winter. So upon Bright Bill's return, she feels as if she's imposing on him and his newfound, you know, status, and stays away till Bright Bill seeks her out. So essentially, he's individualized fully as a grown offspring should. Like I said, individuation is just a natural part of growing up. It's a thing that should happen. And there is a little bit of that feeling sometimes, I feel, from parents, where they kind of feel like they're just encroaching on their kids now that they're grown. But again, Bright Bill, you know, seeks her out. So they do share their love for each other. And Bright Bill now fully is really appreciating her, and she's really appreciating him and what being a mother to him has taught her, you know. And again, this is just all mirroring such a beautiful parent-child relationship so well. Like, I love it so much. When she's taken by, you know, the AI Octobot, Bright Bill goes after her, and in a moment of hopeless defeat, reminds her of her heart, or her soul, if you want to call it that, by laying on her neck as he did as a little one. Their bond is strengthened when he realizes that through the love she has for him, she can function without her internal machinery. That is what convinces him that if he follows her home, she will remember him, she does, right? So meaning, I would be willing to bet that the fact that he now knows that their bond is strong enough to supersede the machinery or even the need for it, that is the thing that likely makes him so confident in the fact that he is going to follow the ship home when she does eventually, like, go home. Not home, but, you know, go back to the factory or whatever for good after they rebuild everything. They come full circle and learn to appreciate each other as equals. Ideally, what I'd want for myself and my eventual adult children, you know, when I have them. It's brilliant. Like, it's absolutely brilliant. Love it. Okay. The Wild Robot on Humanity. And we are to the home stretch here, friends. I was gonna say fam. I don't know, that just doesn't feel like a me thing to say. Anyways, we're in the home stretch here, friends. Let's talk about the Wild Robot and humanity. Ready? So both Roz and the animals are initially operating from a place of ignorance, with Roz wanting to help and the animals attacking what they don't understand, right? I'm talking about the beginning here. Humans behave in both of these ways, often, and it creates issues, as it did for Roz and the animals. Despite their attacks, I mean, obviously, we're supposed to self-insert here, right? Like, obviously, all of this is going on. All of this that's going on is supposed to teach the humans that watch this movie a little something about something, right? So let's talk about how they do that. So, despite their attacks, Roz's programmed desire to help becomes more complex, specifically after activating learning mode and doing away with just the generic programming. Roz isn't the only one displaying the human desire to be helpful and get along, though, because the possum mom sees beyond what Roz is to who she is / who she could be. Meaning, she sees the little bird following around Roz and thinks to help Roz understand the potential that there is there. Which again, right, we have all the other animals behaving in a very unfortunate and disconnected way. But much like there usually is one or two human out there in the world who's willing to be kind and helpful, the possum mom is fulfilling that role and, you know, attempting to help Roz out here. Fink sees Roz in an opportunistic way at first, but his fondness for life with her and Brightbill becomes very evident rather quickly. So again, Fink doing a very human thing, which is to seek out, you know, ways in which he can take advantage of someone else's hard work in order to perhaps, you know, live better or whatever it is. But again, in a very human manner, he starts to realize that he actually really enjoys spending time with Roz and Brightbill, and that becomes very, very, very evident. In her robotic yet very true way, Roz loves Brightbill and is set on ensuring his success, which earns respect from the animals. This respect's now added with gratitude, is solidified during the winter Brightbill goes away, right? Again, so I talked about this in the sense of, in the whole like belonging section, but it's the fact that, I mean, humans are very much like this as well, right? Like when we see somebody do something that's impressive or just do anything that is admirable in any way, shape, or form, be it being a good parent or, you know, being an Olympian athlete or being one of those people who, you know, can wake up in the morning and have like a fantastic routine every single morning and never waver, like whatever it is, whatever you find admirable, we tend to that tends to color our perception of that person a little bit, to the point that, like, you know, maybe there's somebody that I don't vibe with, but if I learn that they do something or are capable of doing something that I find very respectable, or maybe, you know, they show a bit of their character and it's very admirable, that's not going to change the fact that I don't necessarily vibe with that person, that we may not be close friends. However, I am going to have a sense of deeper respect for that person, other than just, okay, you're a person, therefore I will respect you as such, right? Like I'm going to have a hint of like, oh, okay, like actually that's super respectable. I have quite a bit more respect for you than I do just the average people walking around, because I know that about you now, right? And so again, in a very like human way, the animals warm up to Roz as she gains their respect in this very organic manner, right? And again, we kind of have that respect solidified when it's laced with the gratitude that they must be experiencing for the fact that she did ensure that they, at least the ones who were alive, didn't freeze during that winter. So much like humans, the animals in Roz initially operated from ignorance in their own ways. Roz chose to grow and learn, and in turn inspired a change of heart and mind in the animals, who grew beyond their biases as well. By the end, she is one of them, and there's nothing more human than a story about found family. And isn't that so true? Roz's desire to grow and learn is essentially what inspires the change of heart in the animals, because if she hadn't chosen to grow and learn, she wouldn't have been able to help Brightbill in the ways that she did. She wouldn't have been able to essentially impress the rest of the island animals in the way that she did. And it's fantastic. And I mean, I will stand by this. Like, really, there's nothing more human than the story about found family, and the wild robot just nails it on the head, and it's absolutely fantastic. So for some final thoughts here, the wild robot is brilliantly written. I honestly, obviously, like this, I read YA, but kids books in this way, not really my thing, but I genuinely might just see if I can get a hold of the audiobooks just to see how it's written, because I just have a feeling it's gonna be quite good. Because if this movie is anything to go by, like, the movie was brilliantly written, and I'm curious to see if the books are just as brilliantly written. Clearly, this movie is absolutely full of heart. Clearly, they really cared about what they were making, and you can just tell. Being real about the brutality and the beauty in nature made it even deeper for me. By the way, we're in final thoughts if I hadn't said that yet. It made it hit even deeper for me because again, it's just truth. I just love it when we can have truth in age-appropriate ways. It's awesome. And the realities, both difficult and beautiful, of parenthood really hit rather deeply, okay? So let's see. Oh shoot, I'm so sorry. There was a little bit that I forgot to mention on the Wild Robot and Humanity part. So the AI Octobot shows a different, very ugly side of humanity, as humans programmed that AI, obviously, to take what it wants and damn whoever gets in the way, right? Unfortunately, it's sadly human to disregard the well-being of others in order to get what you want. So even in that case, we do get a little bit of like the unfortunate side of humanity, like in one of its worst degrees. Okay, back to final thoughts. Yes, brilliantly written, full of heart. Love that we can show the truth of nature, but still make it very digestible and very fun even at times. The realities, both difficult and beautiful, of parenthood hit very deeply, and I really appreciated it. The way in which we watch Roz go from a foreign monster to the wild robot is heartwarming and, say it with me, fantastic. One of DreamWorks' best, honestly. I firmly believe this. And I definitely feel like if anybody has young kids that, you know, are reading and you think maybe they would enjoy this, I definitely urge you to check out the books by Peter Brown. And also, if you haven't seen this film but you're still here, or maybe you have and maybe I mentioned some things that you didn't quite remember, just go stream it. I mean, honestly, I was keeping myself from streaming it again because I wanted to get this video out first, and I was gonna stream it as a reward to myself. And now there's nothing stopping me. I'm super excited because, I mean, I think I'm just gonna buy it, honestly. I think I'm just gonna buy it on Blu-ray because I'm silly like that. And I still occasionally own physical media, but anyway, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you. If you did make it this far, please consider subscribing to the channel. Please consider clicking the bell because I do post regularly, but I don't post on a schedule. Post lots of trailer reactions, and I do these long form videos, not as frequently, unfortunately, due to my work schedule, but they do happen. So subscribe, the bell if you so choose. Please also consider liking this video. It does help it grow in the algorithm, and I would love for these commentary videos to get a little bit more love. So that would make me super, super happy. In addition to any of your thoughts, feel free to comment the robot emoji. And again, in addition to any of your thoughts, so any thoughts you might have had, also put them in the comments down below. You can also find me on social media, by the way. I'm at Embodying Mystical Mac. And I have a little music account where I do some fun covers on Instagram called @MacandTheMusic. You can go ahead and suggest a song while you're there if you want for me to do. And also, if you want other ways to support the channel, you can check those out in the description below. But I'm just really grateful that you're here. Thank you so much. The Wild Robot was amazing. It took me on such a beautiful ride. I was a mess in the best way possible. And if you've been here since the trailer reactions and all that, and you've been waiting for this video and now you're here, thank you so much for your support. I deeply appreciate you. Mwah! Happy viewing, if that is what you're gonna go do. Or reading, yeah. No, but for real, I like the setup visually, but I don't know if I'm gonna keep it because like sitting on my bed for this long, like I have a pretty strong core, but not ideal for the lower back. At least Roz doesn't have that problem now that she's got all her brand new spanking parts. You think they're gonna do a second one? Okay, bye.